identify themselves as poets than ever before. Most have paid cash money to identify themselves as such. Every interaction with another poet must leave you triumphant. It must leave them fearing and adoring you. It's not enough to merely have poets like you. Like is not strong enough to propel you anywhere except maybe to bed. Fear. Fear is one of humanity's greatest motivators. Fear equals respect and success. Most poets are desperate for any foothold in the art, any sign that they are making progress upward toward their dreams of tweed, tenure, and domination. It's a good exercise to be constantly visualizing yourself in granite on some kind of Mount Rushmore of mortals. You, William Carlos Williams, Emily Dickinson, and Maya Angelou. You, Olson, Nidecker, and Bishop. Or fancy European writers, if dominating America isn't good enough for you. I applaud your ambition in all its forms. I ask you to turn it out overtly upon the world. It cannot be held back, nor should it. Poets will see this swagger in you, this furious halo of anger and hunger, and it will overwhelm them. They will have little choice but to supplicate. Relentlessness does not come easy to the poet. They are generally a stoned and timid bunch, playing with their beards or sitting mousily with their hands and ankles crossed. The poet does very little 24/7 except maybe worry that they're not as widely popular as they should be. Worry does come naturally to the poet. It must be suppressed with booze or sex, or in my case, with those first two impossible, with baseball. And how does one imagine a career being built out of all these words used weirdly? There are many paths through the art. Having enough money to sit in a log cabin all day watching foxes make out with berries on one's breath. Having an entire university beneath one's command, able to drag friends in for a little Merlot and sloppy sex with students. Maybe one imagines being the most important poet in America would entail being on telephone commercials or reality dating programs. America is desperately in need of a new archetypal poet, maybe with a capital P. No kid grows up wanting to be the next Robert Frost. When I flipped through that textbook, I dreamt of being the next Denise Levertov, her dark curls magnificent in a dusk light, her eyes fixed on somewhere off camera. What a quaint dream. Sadly, I will never be that beautiful. Poets need to get bigger dreams, to inhabit larger swaths of American consciousness until the release of a new Dustin Williamson book is akin to the drop date of the next ultra-violent Grand Theft Auto video game update. Poetry has a lot on its side. It's short, which is great for the American attention span. We don't rhyme anymore or count syllables. We don't even have to make sense anymore, which came as a huge relief to me all those years ago, writing about dead birds all the time. The Dead Bird poem is a classic. There are 8 to 10 poems about dead birds in the Best American Poetry 2009 alone. Every poet should have a few ready to whip out whenever the audience is getting restless. Oh, dead bird, you remind me of death and dying, and also Chicken McNuggets. Your tragedy smallly enriches me, and your squashed beak and body so pancake-like. Bugs have condos in your eyes, which saw so much wisdom. And so on. Professors love these kinds of things because they make for such great classroom discussions, which are way easier to have than to lecture about something. Even the longest, windiest kind of lecture requires some kind of preparation. If you just throw a dead bird poem out there, it's like showing one of those driver's ed Death on the Highway movies. The time just hydroplanes by. You can be back up in your log cabin by about noon. But you're asking yourself, Jim, you said I could become the most important poet in America overnight. Let's get to that overnight part. You may have big plans for tomorrow afternoon. Limousines might need to be rented and such. Attending this reading is obviously a good start. We must usher in an age in which we more overtly ask for and attain the things we want in art. It might have been okay to once to sit in this room and dream only of the next poem, and which one of your friends' wives you were going to screw, or how much pot you had at home. Those times are over. Poets must get serious, must get organized, must get 5 stars on all their books on Goodreads.com. Anything with reviews of 4 stars or less most likely will be pulped and disappear forever from consciousness. You may be expecting me to encourage you to create some kind of fake writing movement, which has been popular all last century. But who wants to share the spotlight with anyone else? Fake art movements usually involve one really famous person and a bunch of hangers-on, like Josie and the Pussycats, for example, or Jackson Pollock and a bunch of people who drank with Jackson Pollock. Imagine how much better off Josie would have been minus those pussycats, hogging up all her fame. Poetry movements usually have a bunch of interchangeable poets with little fame trying to create something famous by pooling their efforts, like all the little lion robots that slam into each other and form Voltron. What ends up happening is that Voltron ends up with a bum leg and back problems, because some of these lions are lame poets. And then Voltron is defeated, and the fake art movement turns into just a bunch of bitter old poets. It's not so glorious. I mean, sure, you can get a special issue of Poetry Magazine, but wouldn't you rather have an entire issue of Poetry Magazine dedicated to you, with you smiling out from the cover? Never take your eyes off the prize, and when you have the chance to do so, beat down all competition with the mallet made famous by whack-a-mole. Jay Leno is the future, not Conan O'Brien. Why? Because Leno is devious, sinister, and craven. These are things to aspire to be. Jay Leno would reach through your skin and deep into your stomach to fetch an undigested Skittle if he was hungry for one. That's the spirit of ruthless 24/7 careerism there in a strawberry shell. Make a deal with Russia to not invade Russia, and then when Russia least expects it, invade Russia. That plan may not have worked out for them, but it doesn't mean it can't work for you. Your friends are really just contacts, and you have to start thinking about them that way. If dropping their name isn't worth anything, you may have to drop them. But not before you've sucked them dry of anything that can help you get to number one. And once you get to number one, you can get new friends, like Brad Pitt and Beyonce. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. What is the secret to changing your status as a poet tonight, minutes after you sprint home from this hall? And I'll be available for questions. But really, you should be asking yourself tough questions. Questions like, am I doing enough to conquer American poetry? Ask them to a mirror. Or if you have a pig puppet, you can ask them to yourself. Are you doing enough? Do you want it enough? Are you willing to kill points? Those type of questions. Over and over and over again. Tonight you can go home, pour yourself a cup of peppermint tea, and start contacting your contacts one by one, via smoke signals, IM, Facebook poking, whatever. Ask them, what are you doing for me to help me become the most important poet in America? Have you reviewed my book? Oh, contact you. Can you get me a reading at the 92nd Street Y or on the space station? Have your contacts written critical essays extolling your virtues as an artist, or created weekend symposiums dedicated to the greater understanding of your work? Shouldn't they, get busy on that? We might believe that the media term buzz gets created organically, that everyone just starts twittering about Jersey Shore episodes on their own without any prompting. But it actually takes a concerted effort across a spectrum of sources to create the phenomenons we have come to know and love. I learned this in the publicity office of a big-time Manhattan publisher, most of the time spent on my knees. It takes time, effort, and Altoids to generate buzz. And when it appears that others are talking about you, it is easier to talk about yourself. Did you see that expose about me in Popular Mechanics? I mean, really. Negative publicity works just as good. Having the right people hate you is sometimes better than having the wrong people like you. Controversy is rare in poetry because poets usually just drink and bottle up whatever's bothering them. If everyone just spent a year or two yelling at each other, we poets might be better off and have cleaner colons. So tonight, get your base electrified. It's not bad to also start emailing complete strangers who you think have some kind of power and can help you. Send them a poem. Tell them that they're cute and that you love their poems. That always works. They will roll over and show you their belly then. Friend every poet you can find on Facebook, Goodreads, porn sites, whatever. You might also want to start a Wikipedia site for yourself and your books, but eventually your followers will do that for you. Start imagining everyone else as your unpaid work study. Ultimately, you too are responsible for your own obscurity as an artist, and you have only yourself to blame if no one knows who you are. So whine about teachers giving students awards or grants all you want. Grant writing is more important than poetry writing, and until you master those intricacies, you will be down and out in the city of your choosing. No one really cares if your poems are any good. That's beside the point. What's more crucial in everyone else's eyes is how much power you have and how it can help them. So use your power wisely. It's probably better if